There are moments in life when the air feels heavier, when every step forward feels like dragging chains that no one else can see. Perhaps you've known that kind of morning. You wake up, stare at the ceiling, and wonder what the point of it all is. The alarm clock rings, not as a call to begin a new day, but as a cruel reminder that another cycle of the same routine is waiting. Work feels meaningless, conversations empty, and even your dreams appear faded. At such times, life doesn't need to collapse spectacularly for despair to take root. Sometimes it is not a great tragedy that crushes us, but the quiet erosion of meaning. The daily grind whispers that nothing will change, that tomorrow will be the same, that we are powerless to shape our destiny. And when those whispers are repeated enough, they become a chorus echoing inside our heads. Outwardly, we smile, nod, and carry on. Colleagues see a functional worker, friends see a companion, family sees a responsible son or daughter. Yet beneath the surface, a storm brews. The mind is tired of its own thoughts, tired of carrying the weight of disappointment, tired of pretending. This dissonance, the gap between who we appear to be and who we truly feel like inside, creates a fracture in the soul. Questions begin to circle like vultures. Why am I here? What difference does it make if I keep going? What's the meaning behind all this repetition? They are not new questions. Humanity has asked them for centuries. But when they turn personal, they become suffocating. You feel like a prisoner inside your own mind, locked in a cage of endless reflection without resolution. And then, in this silence, when despair and fatigue blend into a dull hum, something unexpected often happens. A word overheard in passing, a line from a book you almost didn't pick up, a memory resurfacing from long ago. It is never dramatic, rarely grand, but it can be enough to spark a flicker of awareness. That flicker says, perhaps there is another way to see this. Before the transformation comes, there is always hesitation. The human mind clings to its familiar misery. After all, we fear the unknown more than we fear suffering we already understand. But that small spark of wisdom, whether from a mentor, a stranger, or even from within ourselves, carries the promise that perspective can shift. And when perspective shifts, the entire landscape of life begins to rearrange itself. The first chapter of every transformation begins in darkness. It is the darkness of stagnation, of meaning slipping through your fingers, of silence pressing down on your chest. Yet this very darkness prepares the ground for wisdom to enter, for without the weight of despair, we would never recognize the value of a single phrase that can pierce through it. Change rarely announces itself with a trumpet. More often, it slips quietly into our lives, unnoticed until it has already settled into the corners of our thoughts. Perhaps it is a sentence overheard in a crowded cafe, spoken by strangers who have no idea their words are being carried into another soul. Perhaps it is a dusty book opened by accident, its underlined passages whispering across decades. Or perhaps it is a teacher, a mentor, or even a passerby whose words arrive at the exact moment you are ready to hear them. It is astonishing how a single phrase can pierce through the fog of despair. Imagine being lost in a labyrinth, wandering for hours with no sense of direction, and suddenly spotting a crack of sunlight through the stone. That is what wisdom does. It offers a glimpse of possibility where none seem to exist. A simple sentence carrying the distilled experience of countless lives has the power to reroute an entire destiny. There was once a carpenter who spent his life building houses for others. When he grew old, he decided to retire. His employer asked him to build just one more house. The carpenter, weary and impatient, rushed through the work, cutting corners, using cheap materials. When the house was done, the employer handed him the keys and said, "This is your house, a gift for your years of service." The carpenter was struck with regret. He had built carelessly, not knowing he was building his own home. In that moment, he realized every nail, every beam, every effort we put into the world is ultimately shaping the house we live in. When you hear such a story in a moment of despair, it doesn't feel like a fable, it feels like a mirror. You see yourself in the carpenter, rushing through days, careless with choices, impatient with the process of life. And suddenly you understand, I am building my own house every day. Every word spoken, every decision made, every habit repeated is a brick in the architecture of your future. Wisdom does not erase problems. The bills remain unpaid, the loneliness still lingers, the uncertainties of tomorrow still loom, but wisdom shifts the lens. Instead of seeing life as punishment, you begin to see it as a canvas. Instead of drowning in routine, you begin to notice the small choices that shape destiny. A phrase like, "Every act builds your house," transforms despair into responsibility, and responsibility into empowerment. This spark is not an explosion. It is a slow fire, quiet yet persistent. You may not shout with joy or leap into action immediately. Instead, you carry the phrase with you, turning it over in your mind like a pebble in your pocket. Slowly, it begins to shape your choices. Slowly, it begins to whisper in moments of doubt. And slowly, it begins to rewrite your life. Every journey of transformation begins with a spark. For some, it is a story. For others, it is a phrase, a teacher, or even a moment of silence that suddenly reveals clarity. The wisdom itself is timeless, but its power lies in timing, arriving exactly when the soul is weary enough to listen. Every great change begins with hesitation. After the spark of wisdom touches the heart, the mind resists. It whispers, "It's just words. Tomorrow will be the same." The familiar routine calls us back like a lullaby of comfort, even though it suffocates us. Yet there comes a moment when hesitation itself becomes unbearable. To remain unchanged feels more dangerous than to risk the unknown. The turning point is not a grand leap, but a small step, a choice that seems insignificant to the world, but monumental to the individual. Perhaps it is deciding to wake up an hour earlier. Perhaps it is writing down one honest thought in a notebook. Perhaps it is reaching out to someone you've ignored. The act itself may be small, but its meaning is profound. I am no longer a passive passenger of my life. I am steering, however clumsily, toward change. The mind rebels, it clings to old habits, protesting. Why bother? You'll fail anyway. Nothing will last. The turning point is not the absence of these voices, but the courage to act despite them. Change begins when you understand that doubt is not a stop sign. It is merely the echo of yesterday trying to protect itself. There comes a day when you look in the mirror and recognize the distance between who you are and who you want to be. That recognition stings, but it is also sacred. Without it, you would drift it forever. With it, you are called to bridge the gap. You whisper to yourself, "I don't have to stay this way. I can begin again." The turning point is marked by ordinary actions charged with extraordinary intent. Washing the dishes becomes an act of reclaiming order. Going for a walk becomes a statement of choosing life over numbness. Saying no to one thing opens space to say yes to something greater. The world does not notice these acts, but your soul does. And slowly, the soul begins to trust you again. Freedom is not an open field at first. It is a window cracked open in a suffocating room. You breathe and the air tastes different. You move and your body feels lighter. The problems have not disappeared, but your posture toward them has shifted. You are no longer bowing under their weight. You are learning to stand. That is the essence of the turning point. Not escape, but awakening. The turning point is not a single moment captured in a photograph. It is a series of quiet rebellions against despair. It is the courage to try again, to take one step, to choose meaning when meaning feels absent. And though the world may not applaud, the universe does. For every time a human soul turns from darkness toward light, creation itself expands with hope. Change is never a straight line. Just when you take your first steps forward, the old shadows rise again. They whisper, "You've tried before. You always fail. Why would this time be different?" Habits are chains disguised as comfort. They pull you back toward the familiar chair, the same empty routines, the same numbing escapes. You feel torn between the promise of a new path and the gravity of what you have always known. This struggle is not visible to others. You may still smile, still work, still function, but inside it feels like a war, a constant pull between surrender and persistence. The past appears like a ghost, reminding you of every failure. Memories replay like broken records, unfinished dreams, broken promises, wasted chances. Each memory tries to convince you that you are trapped forever in the same cycle. But then, that phrase returns, the one that sparked your journey. Every act builds your house. It cuts through the noise of doubt, reminding you that the past does not dictate the present. You realize the turning point was not the end of struggle, it was the beginning. Now every choice matters even more. Do you return to the comfort of old shadows, or do you take another step toward the light? You choose to act, even if the act is small. You choose to resist the pull of the shadows, even if your hands still tremble. And in that choice lies victory, not over the world, but over yourself. The struggle with old shadows is proof of progress. If you were not moving forward, the past would not fight so hard to hold you back. Every battle faced is a sign that you are alive, awake, and capable of change. Inspiration sparks the journey, but discipline sustains it. Without structure, motivation fades, and the old shadows return. Renewal is not a single moment. It is a rhythm, a daily practice that must be chosen again and again. Discipline begins with the ordinary, waking up at the same time, writing 3 sentences in a journal, taking a walk even when you don't feel like it. These acts may seem small, but together they weave a net that holds your new life. Repetition is the soil in which transformation grows. Every time you repeat an act of renewal, you dig a deeper groove in your identity. What was once effort becomes habit. What was once fragile becomes strong. There will be days when the discipline feels heavy. You will want to skip, to rest, to return to ease. But discipline is not about perfection, it is about persistence. Missing once does not destroy you, quitting does. Neuroscientists say the brain builds new pathways through repetition. Every time you practice discipline, you are carving a road toward the person you want to become. At first, the road is narrow, overgrown with weeds. But step by step, it becomes wide, clear, and easier to walk. Discipline is not punishment, it is identity. When you say, "I choose this act every day," you are declaring who you are. Renewal is not just about changing habits, it is about becoming someone new, step by step, breath by breath. The discipline of renewal is the quiet hero of transformation. It does not dazzle like inspiration, nor thrill like breakthrough moments, but it is the steady drumbeat that carries you through storms, doubts, and temptations. In the end, discipline is freedom. The freedom to build the life you choose, not the one chosen for you. The journey of renewal often begins in solitude. You rise before dawn, you write in silence, you wrestle with your own thoughts. Yet as you walk, you begin to notice others on similar roads, quiet souls carrying the same questions, the same longings. There is something healing about being seen. When another person nods at your struggle, you no longer feel invisible. It is as if the weight you carry has been halved, simply because someone else acknowledges it. Sometimes, the companion is a mentor. They have walked further down the road and offer their wisdom as lanterns to your steps. Their words do not remove obstacles, but they illuminate them, making the path less frightening. At other times, the companions are peers. They stumble when you stumble. They rise when you rise. Together, you laugh at failures, celebrate small victories, and remind one another not to give up. Community is not about removing the struggle, but about sharing the fire. When your flame flickers, theirs burns brighter and lends you light. When theirs weakens, yours steadies them. Together, you become a circle of resilience. When you cut yourself off from companions, the journey becomes heavier. The old shadows return more easily when no one is there to remind you of the light. Isolation is the soil where despair grows strongest. True renewal is not only personal, it is shared. As you grow, you inspire others. As they grow, they inspire you. Together, the path becomes not a lonely climb, but a shared ascent. The companions on the path remind us that transformation is not a solitary achievement. It is a human story, woven through voices, laughter, tears, and encouragement. When we walk together, we discover that the strength we thought we lacked was always multiplied in community. At first, change feels exciting. New habits shine, new thoughts inspire, and every step feels like progress. But soon, the novelty fades, and what remains is the long road of endurance. There are seasons when life feels like a desert. Your effort seems unrewarded, your prayers unanswered, your work unnoticed. The temptation whispers, "Why keep going? Nothing is happening." But beneath the surface, growth is happening. Seeds break open in darkness long before they push through the soil. The trials of endurance are not wasted. They are preparing roots that will one day hold a towering tree. Waiting is one of the hardest disciplines. It tests not your ability to act, but your ability to stay steady when nothing seems to move. In waiting, you discover patience, and patience becomes strength. Endurance is also tested in storms. Illness comes, loss arrives, relationships fracture. The path you built with care seems threatened by forces beyond your control. And yet, endurance means refusing to collapse. It means holding your ground even when the wind howls. You may bend, but you do not break. You may cry, but you do not quit. Endurance does not simply keep you alive, it transforms you. The person who begins the trial is not the same as the one who finishes. Endurance carves resilience into your bones and teaches your heart to trust the slow work of time. The trials of endurance are not punishments but invitations. They invite you to dig deeper, to trust longer, to grow stronger. Every step taken in endurance is a declaration. I will not give up. I will become more than I was. After the long trials of endurance, something begins to shift. The nights do not feel as endless. The mornings carry a hint of hope. You realize you have survived storms that once threatened to destroy you. At first, the light is fragile. It arrives like a thin dawn breaking after a long night. But that single ray is enough to remind you that darkness is not forever. You begin to see that the valley of suffering was not wasted. It shaped your resilience. It deepened your compassion. It opened your eyes to the beauty of even the smallest victories. The taste of water after thirst feels sacred. A smile from a friend feels like a miracle. The ordinary becomes extraordinary when seen through the eyes of renewal. You understand now that courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to keep walking even when fear shouts its loudest. And every step taken in courage multiplies your strength. As the valley opens, you glimpse horizons you never imagined. The future no longer looks like a repetition of yesterday. It looks like a new beginning, unwritten, unshaped, full of possibility. The light beyond the valley is not just the end of suffering, it is the birth of hope. It teaches you that no night lasts forever and no valley stretches endlessly. Beyond every shadow, there waits a horizon filled with promise. When light fills your heart, it cannot stay hidden. The hope you discovered begins to overflow, seeking others who still wander in darkness. The call rises within. What I have found is not only for me, it is meant to be shared. Stories have power. When you speak of your valley, your struggles, and your small victories, others recognize their own wounds in your words. Your honesty becomes their medicine. At first you hesitate. Shame whispers. They will judge you. They will laugh at you. But then you remember. Silence protects the shadows, while sharing releases the light. Never underestimate the power of one voice. A sentence spoken at the right time can change a life. Your words may seem small to you, but to someone else, they are a lifeline. Sharing is like casting a stone into water. The ripples move outward, touching shores you will never see. One act of courage multiplies into countless acts of hope. When you carry light, you also carry responsibility, not to be perfect, but to be real. Not to impress, but to inspire. Not to preach, but to walk alongside others. The call to share is not a burden, it is a gift. It transforms personal healing into collective hope. And in answering this call, you discover the deepest truth. The light you give away is the light that grows stronger within you. Every step you took, through darkness, through struggle, through hope, has brought you here. You are no longer the person who once trembled in despair. You carry scars, but they shine as proof of your survival. The greatest victory is not what you gained, it is who you became. You are more resilient, more compassionate, more alive. This is the true reward of the journey. A soul awakened, a heart renewed, a life reborn. Legacy is not built from monuments of stone, it is built from moments. Every word of kindness, every act of courage, every spark of hope you passed on. Your life becomes a river, flowing beyond you, carrying light to places you may never see. There comes a moment when you realize Your story is not only yours, it belongs to those who listen, who are inspired, who rise because you dare to rise. This is the sacred circle of transformation. Light received becomes light given, and when your voice fades, your impact remains. Your choices, your endurance, your compassion, they continue as a whisper in the hearts of others. A whisper that says, you are not alone, you can endure, you can begin again. This is the transformation of legacy. Your pain turned into power, your weakness turned into wisdom, your journey turned into a gift for the world. And as you look back, your heart is filled not with regret, but with gratitude. For every shadow taught you to treasure the light. For every tear carved space for deeper joy. For every ending gave birth to a new beginning. So now, stand tall, carry your light, walk forward with hope unshaken. For your life is not only a story, it is a legacy echoing into eternity.